Hey guys, what's up? I'm back with another developer diary. This is the third one that I've done. I did an introduction first, that was episode 0. Then I did a project management kind of centered episode where I talked about the preparation before I started getting into the code. And now this is where it's going to get a little bit more exciting, and we're going to actually go into the code that I've written. I've done one sprint and now I'm halfway through my second sprint. If you're not familiar with how sprints work generally, it's part of the agile methodology of software development, and basically you divide your work into a 2-week sprint and you commit to doing certain tasks in that sprint, and then at the end of the 2 weeks you are finished the sprint and either you achieved your goals and you met your deliverables, or you did not, and then you have to carry them over to the next sprint. And it seems a bit arbitrary to just put these like deadlines on things when they're not actually needed, but I find personally it's a good motivation for really keeping myself on pace and seeing where I am in a project and how far how much stuff I've completed, as well as how close I am to finishing the project. So right now, being one sprint done, the first sprint I didn't get much done. I was more project setup. We'll go into that. So the second sprint, I'm done the first week of the sprint, and then I still have 1 week to go. But I actually have gotten a lot done in this sprint, and I've gotten done more than I've expected to. So I'm going to have to adopt in new stuff right now, even halfway through the sprint. So that should be good in terms of getting the project done on time. I'm ahead of schedule right now, so hopefully if I run into anything down the road that's going to cause more setbacks, then I have that extra time now because I've been able to get more done. All right, so let's jump into the code now. Okay, so what we're going to do here is I'm just going to go through the files kind of one by one, and then just kind of explain them briefly. I'm not going to go too much into detail because that would just take way too long. I'll just give like a brief overview of what I've done. So in this index.js file here, this is work that I did in the first sprint. My tasks for that were to kind of just get React DocGen working programmatically and be able to parse files programmatically. So what I did is I imported React DocGen and a few other libraries along with that, and basically made this into a command line tool, an npm module that you can go download and then add to your own project and run commands. And then my documentation generator will use React DocGen to pull out documentation and then put it into a format that I find useful to put into a visual UI. So here are the different scripts, and I kind of organize them into an array of objects. I have the name, and that's what's going to be referenced as the command when you want to call it. So when you want to parse a project, you're going to run the parse command, and then there's a little description here, so you can like type help and it'll show you all the descriptions. And on the console it'll say generating documentation when that's called. So the proc is the actual function, the procedure that's being called when you actually call the function name. So what that does is it uses this library called glob to recursively go through, find every JavaScript file, and basically list it out. So I'm looking in source, that's my root. So I might add in something to like change that and make it customizable, but right now I'm just hard coding values in. So I'm looking in the source folder of any project, and I'm also excluding node modules as well as any tests. Those aren't really things you want to include, so I might add some customization there too, so you can add your own file for what you want the documentation generator to ignore. But again, that's stuff for after I get a minimum viable product up and running, and I can get into that a bit more. Yeah, so once I get all the file names, I basically go through each file and I go grab the file, I read it in as a string, and then once I get that, once I get each file as a string, then I run React DocGen on it. So that I run the parse command of React DocGen on the data that I get back from the file, which is just the plain text code of the file. It comes out into an abstract syntax tree in component info. And here I'm hard coding in a module type. So I know that this is a React component just because React DocGen will only parse React components. If not, it will actually throw an error. So in this try block, I can actually specify that it's a React component right there, and I can use that later on for just classifying different types of components. If not, it's a standard JS component. I'm going to add more in later, but when I do some checking to see what types of components they are, I might add in something for like checking if it's a Redux component, or I might even add in something, some more stuff for file statistics, like determining if it's a less file or a JSON file, and parse some information of those as well. So once I get that information out from React DocGen, add my own little tweaks to it, then I write it out to its own file, and the file just takes its file name with JSON appended at the end of it, so it's a JSON document. But in addition to that, just because I'm not sure exactly how I want to handle the data right now, I think I'm also writing an entire object out to a docs.json file. So that's just going to be a whole giant one JSON file with all of the documentation in just that one file. And that's actually how you'll see in a minute how I'm actually importing the data right now to the UI that I've built. I'm using just this single large document. That's actually, I'm finding it's an easy way to deal with stuff. It might get more complex as the project starts to grow, but right now I like using it that way. Yeah, and then view, this isn't hooked up yet, but the command will launch the documentation viewer. I also have a command help, which just lists the different commands that you can call. That's basically it for the command line interface. To test this out, I actually set up let's see if I can find it here. Set up somewhere. Not here, more testing stuff. All right, so I actually set up just a test project. It's called Test App right now. It's just something that I can use to generate documentation off of when I'm going through and testing everything. And I hooked this up as an NPM module, and just so I don't have to actually publish and re-download it all the time. If you look in the NPM modules here, way down here, so right here, React Visual Docs, you can see a little arrow on that file. So I actually linked that to my project that's running locally. So any changes I make there will actually appear in this app. So if we launch a new terminal here and write npm run docgen parse, you can see there's the output from my app that I've this is actually the output from my command line file, the index.js file that we were looking at before. So that's actually how you run it. You run npm run docgen, and how I set that up was in this test app, in the package.json, I added a docgen script and I linked it to React VizDocs. This actually took like a really long time to set up because I've never done it before, it took like a really long time to set up React VizDocs to actually run as an npm script, but really it just took a lot of hacking. You also need to add this line to the top, like to run as in the Node environment. There's just a lot to it, but it's working now, and I definitely learned a lot about how npm works and how Node works in the process of doing that, so it was definitely worth it in the end. So that's basically what I did for Sprint 1. Now let's move on to Sprint 2, and Sprint 2 I'm focusing more on the UI. So this is actually what the UI looks like. I think I might cut this one off short actually, and maybe show you like more of the code next time after the end of this sprint. It's just because this is getting a bit long. But this is what the UI actually looks like right now, and what I was able to build. So like that JSON that's coming out, I'm actually rendering from that test app. I'm actually rendering stuff here. That's actually data that's been parsed out of the source code from React DocGen. So this is actually real documentation on those components. And there's that React component flag that I added in earlier that I said I could use in the UI. So I'm gonna like make different like tags that I can add on to help categorize some of these components. And over here, this is using the D3 library. This is just like, this actually isn't being parsed out right now. That's just data that I manually put in just to test it out. But in the future, I'm gonna like modify React DocGen to actually parse out file imports. So these are showing like file imports, like the to-do list imports Lodash. To-do list also imports to-do item and checkbox. To-do item imports checkbox, React, and Moment.js. So that's just kind of like a sample app, and just a small little sample graph. But like when there's like a bunch of nodes on this graph, you can see how that would be very easy to kind of be able to see visually how your project is structured and all the interdependencies of it. Yeah, there's like more stuff that I'm going to add down here as well. I'm going to add a list of component dependencies and what they're dependent on, as well as what's dependent on the component you're currently looking at. And also you can see here I've color coded these nodes. So the blue here, that matches up with this blue over here, and that's a React component, and the green is a Node module. If you're parsing a file that's importing a Node module, you'll be able to see that pretty clearly based on this graph here. This is the mock-up that I made for that UI. So this is what I'm basing it on. Like you can see here, I need to add these dependencies down below, dependencies and dependents. And then I'm also going to like put the source code in here. So if you're looking at the documentation, you can see the source code right next to it. This is kind of a work in progress right now, but it's pretty close to what I have there. So yeah, I think the project's going along pretty well so far. Like I said, this is part of the second sprint, the UI. Mostly what I'm going to be working on the second half of the sprint is kind of cleaning up the code around this chart. It's a little bit hacky right now. It's very hacky right now. So I'm going to have to definitely do some work to clean this up. This is actually just really fun to play with. I love it. But yeah, once the UI is wrapped up, or once the sprint is wrapped up, then I'll actually go into the code for the UI a bit more. Like I said before, the video is getting a bit long, so I'm just going to cut it off here. Alright, so that is it for today's developer diary. I hope that you enjoyed it, you got something out of it. If there was something that you have a question about in the project, a suggestion, comments, anything, just leave them in the comments down below. Anyway, that is it for now. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.